I wish this was not a true story. And they were just in awe of what I had just done. Stopped traffic, ran out, grabbed this gopher, and I'm standing there dripping blood in the parking lot like this. And I did not know pigs could swim, so I panicked. This past weekend, I was asked to speak at the Charlotte County Fall Fair about everything that goes on here, all of the mishaps and all of the junk that I've got myself into over the last couple of years. So I'm laying in a hospital bed with bandages on my face and this cooling cream, and I hear the nurses giggling. And I want to know what your favorite joke is over the next 40 minutes. This is just a quick little talk about what I have done, what we have done, and the chaos that I've put myself through over the past couple years. I've liked to pride myself over the last couple years of showing people what not to do on the internet. I've become the guy for some reason that is on Facebook, Instagram with no pants on, because I like to show the reality of when you're going outside first thing in the morning to take care of the animals. You're doing it in a robe, you're doing it, even last week, I was chasing a coon that was trying to get into our chicken coop, and I did that in a lovely, luxurious robe. Often, in a lot of comments that I got, people said that they do it in boxer shorts or next to nothing, especially depending on where you live. But yeah, flip-flops, whatever. And so for the last couple of years, we've been trying to figure out how to do this self-sufficiency thing. We have learned over COVID and over the last couple of years that supply chain issues and even the quality of our food has been in decline, so we really want to know where our food comes from. And I even discovered this week, I tried some fresh grapes from a friend. I'd never had fresh grapes before, and they were the most beautiful thing I'd ever had. But we really started, or I got started about 24 years ago when my mom introduced me to animals. I've loved animals for years, and we found a dead mouse in our garage, and she took it and she cut it open, and we examined it, did a dissection on it. And I remember standing there, I was 6 years old, and I looked at it and I said, "That's sick, Mommy." I thought it was disgusting. But over time and over the last couple of years, I grew to love animals. I went through a biology degree, and in 2017 was really the first time that I really fell in love with taking care of animals. I was driving home in town of Woodstock, and I saw a gopher on the side of the road that had been hit, and my heart just retched because of that poor gopher. And of course, I pulled over as fast as I could, and I raced to grab this gopher in the middle of the road. And if you've ever grabbed a wounded rodent or animal, what is the first thing they do? Yeah, they're going to try to bite you. So I picked up this. He was crawling, army crawling across the road. I stopped traffic, and I grabbed this rodent, and he had no idea what I was doing, assumed that I was going to hurt him. I picked him up, and he bit me on the finger. So now him and I are bleeding. I'm standing in the middle of the road, and I pulled him close to try to protect myself, and he bit me on the stomach. And so I'm holding this gopher, and I walk over in the parking lot of the superstore. I'm bleeding, he's wiggling all about, and I'm like, what do I do now? I'm holding him. I've got a gopher. I'm dripping blood. He's dripping blood. And there was a minivan that saw the whole thing happen. And there was two ladies about 20 feet over that saw me holding this gopher sitting in the superstore parking lot. And they were just in awe of what I had just done. Stopped traffic, ran out, grabbed this gopher, and I'm standing there dripping blood in the parking lot like this. And they thought it was weird, and I didn't know what to do because I couldn't let this thing go. I cared for it now. It was my property. I needed to take care of it. So I sat on the curb for a little bit until I really had recognized that it had passed. And I walked over to these ladies in the minivan, and I kind of knocked on the window with the beak of my hat, and I said, "Could you call somebody for me?" And what do you do when somebody asks you to call somebody for them? Hand them your cell phone, but I still had a gopher in my hands, and I was covered in blood, so I gave them the number, and they did the call for me. But from there, I knew that I was going to take care of animals, and I loved animals. We tried hatching chicks over the last couple years, and it's been traumatic. If you've ever tried to hatch your own chicks or take care of chickens from babies, it's very difficult. We lost a lot this year. And I found out that foxes can be pretty smart. That's why they use the phrase "sly as a fox." And I discovered that when I would leave for a work trip, for a weekend, for a couple of days, and I would come back, I'd be missing a rooster. And that happened about 4 times in a row where I'd leave one month and come home, and Nicole would say, "I haven't seen the rooster for a couple of days. I don't know what happened." We lock him in at night. Come to find out there was a fox that was getting in and killing our chickens, that was getting my rooster whenever I'd leave. And then we got this rooster, Dawn. This rooster had been picked on for the first couple of years, and the reason that we started homesteading was to be able to be more self-sufficient, to save money, which is probably what a lot of you try to homestead for, or you want to save money on your grocery bill. Groceries are insane right now. And so we wanted to rescue these animals, or at least I told myself I was going to rescue these, and we took in 2 roosters, and this rooster, Don, was a haggard-looking fella. He did not look well. He had been picked on. He was in a household of 7 other roosters, and we brought him in, him and his brother Waylon. Waylon was a decent rooster, but Don was a jerk. I didn't like him at all. He hoarded the food, and he didn't look like a rooster. If you had any questions whether chickens are dinosaurs, you could see Don, and he was just a dinosaur through and through. And so Don was just annoying. He had no tail feathers, barely any feathers on his neck, and he just looked super weird. And then one day I was out feeding the chickens, and I fed everybody, and Don was the type to hoard over the food bowl. Like, he was in there like a pro wrestler, just back and forth, making sure nobody else got any food. And then poor Don came flying out of the chicken coop. And I was like, what's going on with Don? And he was making noises that I'd never heard a chicken make before, just gagging and whatnot. And then he started laying on the ground, convulsing. And I was so confused. I'd never seen a rooster. This was probably my 3rd or 4th rooster. I was like, I know I'm new to this, but I don't think these animals are supposed to do that. And Don was laying there convulsing on the ground, and part of me was like, Don's a jerk. I kind of want this to happen. But the other part of me was, I need to save this rooster. He's mine. He's mine. Again, like that gopher. I need to take care of him. I need to protect him. And so I grabbed him, and come to find out, the greedy little jerk had eaten so much food that he had filled his crop and he had suffocated himself. So he was choking. So I picked up this rooster that was convulsing on the ground. And I was like, I don't know how to do CPR on a rooster or a chicken. That was my pride. I wanted to protect him, to save him. And I was like, how do you mouth to mouth on a beak? How do you figure out all that? And unfortunately, that was another instance where we lost an animal, where Don passed. And then we've sort of learned from those experiences. And over the last couple of years, as we've gained more and more animals, as people have realized what I do is very kind of public, people know where I live, at least in our community, they've decided that they can just drive by and drop off animals. So people will drive by, and unfortunately a lot of kittens are this way. If you live rural, you'll notice that stray cats are just everywhere, barn cats and whatnot. We've had people that just toss cats out the window, broken legs. And then a little chicken. Somebody called me one day and said, do you want a chicken? I was like, of course I want a chicken. Free chickens, free eggs? Absolutely. What I didn't know is that this chicken, which we named Alice, was about this big. The tiniest chicken I had ever seen, and it was 7 years old. That they just decided that they were going to drop off at our house, and so I took it. I don't know what to do with this chicken. Our chickens are 5 times the size of this other chicken. So Alice went next door, which is now fondly known as my parents' place, as Wendy's Animal Hospital. She takes care of everything because she has a soft spot for all of my lame and broken animals. There's a couple of ducks that I got this spring that I wanted to take care of them. I wanted to put them in my freezer, and she just didn't have the heart to do it. So she made sure that she kept Louie. Louie has an inturned foot due to a deficiency when he was younger. And he's still around. And I think it's foolish to be caring for animals that you aren't going to eat, that are just kind of there, except cats and dogs. They have other places in my heart, at least taking care of. The mice are taking care of squirrels. Our little cat takes care, she's a 3-legged little cat, takes care of squirrels. I saw her carrying a red squirrel the other day. But people have decided that they can just drive by our house and drop off animals. So it started with Alice and chickens and roosters, and somebody showed up with pigs one day. And I wasn't ready for pigs. I don't have a barn. I have 3/4 of an acre of property. So I had to decide, am I going to do this? Am I not? And because I film everything and think it's kind of funny to not tell Nicole, I said yes. So we get these 2 pigs, castrated, so we couldn't even breed them. I don't know what I was thinking. These 2 little potbelly pigs, about 150 pounds each. And they dropped them off, and I was like, the chicken run, that's fine. They'll be fenced in. We'll keep them in there. And they got out. And I barricaded it with doors and whatnot, and they got out again and got out again. And I was so frustrated with them tearing up the ground. I was like, you know what, I'm done. I got to get rid of these pigs. So I called a friend who I knew kept pigs. She wanted potbellies so bad. I was like, you can't breed them. He's not going to be any good. She didn't care. She was going to take them. So the day she showed up, I had them all barricaded in, all of these doors. And of course, when I go to grab them, they're gone. And I wasn't ready for that. If you've ever tried to catch a pig, it is quite difficult. This was my first time ever trying to catch a pig. And this thing knew that I was after it. So I caught the female. I have a couple of, if you've seen my property on social media, I have a couple of shopping carts because I like to take pictures with them. They're pretty. And she dove under the shopping cart and got stuck. So she was butt out of this shopping cart, squealing, had to pull her by the legs and get her into a kennel. But then the male had disappeared. He had ran into the woods. I felt bad because I was like, again, I want to care for my animals. I don't want him to die by this foolish fox or a bear or something's going to get him. So I need to find him. And so I started looking, and eventually I found him. He had laid down, prone, and not moving and silent, completely silent. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this pig. And I chased him out of the woods, and we live by the river. And I was chasing him up the river, and I was going, and he jumped into the water. And I did not know pigs could swim, so I panicked. So I stripped as fast as possible, throwing cell phones and keys and jumping into the water. Pigs float. They're fat. Of course they're going to float. And he floated down the river, and then, of course, I had only gotten a few feet, and he just went along and then hopped up, and we were eventually able to catch him. And believe it or not, pigs are not the only animals that can swim. When we first started homesteading was with chickens and with rabbits. We started with rabbits because meat rabbits have been pretty popular. They're fairly simple meat to have. I never actually had the heart to butcher them. They're too cute for me. We're thinking about getting back into them, but we'll see. And we got out of meat rabbits. I didn't like them in their cages and just not on grass. So they got out, and they were all over the property. People would drive by. I saw your chickens and your rabbits that were all over, and we had a couple that were super sly. They got away from the fox. They got away from the raccoons. We had lost so many to weasels, but this one was just hanging about. So I set a live trap because I was like, I don't have the heart to shoot her. I don't have the heart to snare her. She needs to go to a better home or at least drop her off somewhere else. So I caught her in the live trap, and I was like, you know what? Well, I'll walk across the dam, and I'll just let her go on the other side of the water. It'll be a beautiful place. She can live over there on the pasture. And I dropped her off and shed a little tear and started walking back. And I walked back to the house, and I told Nicole what I had done, feeling shame in my heart. And she said, what are you talking about? There's a rabbit right there. There was a soaking wet rabbit over by the chicken coop still. And I didn't know rabbits could swim either. So apparently pigs can swim, rabbits can swim. Eventually we did catch her and were able to get rid of her, but I've discovered that is how our homesteading journey is going to go. We're going to figure this out as we go along, and we're going to try to do our best that we can. And my prerogative has always been animals. I love animals. I have a brown thumb, not a green thumb, because I kill everything that I grow. So the first year that we grew our garden, it was a flower garden, not on purpose, by accident, because I figured you just plant things. I've lived around fields my entire life. I figured you could just throw corn in the ground, potatoes in the ground, corn, potatoes, done. It's that easy. I have a biology degree. I shouldn't be that stupid. Apparently I am. This grew up grass. We didn't water it or anything. I don't know what I was thinking our first year. And it was an absolute failure. So the next year we learned from that. Okay, take care of your garden. That's number one. Number two, you need to have a plot for it. You got to protect it from the rabbits, from the foxes, from the chickens and everything. So we had, and the deer, yeah. We have to have a nice set spot for our garden. And we did. We had this beautiful spot. We had tomatoes at the back. We had lettuce and rows of carrots, and it was a beautiful garden. And then we had this one plant in the corner that I had no idea what it was. And I was like, that's not a weed though. That's something else. And so we left it grow. I was like, it might be a cucumber. It could be a squash. It could be a pumpkin. It could be a number of things. So we just kind of let it do its thing. And it grew a lot and a lot and a lot more, and it took over our entire garden. Our little garden was about 12 by 15, and it took over pretty much our entire garden. And it was a pumpkin. I had no idea. I had never grown pumpkins before, but I was excited that something was growing, at least. So we had figured out how to grow something. And we grew 2 beautiful pumpkins last year that we saved, and even this morning I found our last can of canned pumpkin. This morning we also discovered that you shouldn't can pumpkin, as people told me, because it's fatty and you're not supposed to. They blew up last night when we were trying to can them. So gardening is really not my thing. And then this year, we decided we're going to try, from last year's saved seed, we're going to try to move into saving our own seed. So we want to save money by raising our own animals, raising our own food. Well, seed saving should be relatively simple. It should be something you're able to, you just save the seeds. You dry them, you keep them for the next year. And we had a baby in May, beautiful baby boy, Ezra. And May is planting season. May is when you're getting the garden ready, you're getting everything in the ground, and if you've dealt with a newborn, I was the only one who was able to do anything. Nicole was 100% taken over by the baby, and so I was exhausted trying to get this garden in, trying to do as much as I could. And so what we did, what most people call chaos gardening, and I think it's just lazy gardening. We just threw seeds. We took these seeds from the pumpkins the year before, just threw them about. And Nicole was trying to make rows. I remember being in the garden. I think there's a video on our YouTube of this, that she made a nice big row of zucchini. It's beautiful. It produced so much this summer. And then I was just walking through with pumpkin seeds. I had a little baggie that I was just throwing, and she was like, can we have like some I know it's a chaos garden, but can we have some sense of order? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Well, there's going to be pumpkins over here, pumpkins up here. And we did. The pumpkins were the best thing to grow, and it was the thing that we planted the most haphazard. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know if it was going to grow. We were scared earlier this season because we got too much water. Apparently they like water, and they've gotten really big. But the zucchinis that Nicole planted also grew very big and grew a lot. And if you ask people what to do with zucchini, they'll give you a plethora of answers. Relish. You can turn them into fries. You can turn them into so many different things. Apparently you can turn them into pineapple, faux pineapple. It sounds disgusting, I know, but it's delicious. Tastes exactly like pineapple. You can turn it into apple pie filling. Same thing. Sounds disgusting because it's a zucchini. A green thing does not belong in a pie, in my opinion. I guess quiche is something, but that's a whole other story. So we had a ton of zucchini that was just popping up. And if you've ever grown zucchini, they will go from this to this overnight, and it's ridiculous. And we had some that were 8 pounds. We had just zucchini that were constantly coming, so much so that I needed to get rid of some. And my buddy Todd would drive by every day in his wheeler. We're right close to the Wheeler Trail, and he would drive by every day, and I'm like, I'm going to give Todd some zucchini. And I think he knew, because he would drive by a little extra fast every time I saw him. And so one day I was out picking in the garden, and I heard Todd's wheeler, and I grabbed a zucchini, and I looked, and I bolted for the road. And I said, for the love of God, Todd, you take my zucchini. And I was just throwing them in his wheeler. He didn't have a choice. He took 5 or 6 zucchini from me that day. And so I think we're finally out of zucchini. I'll go home and find another 8-foot one or something. But I think we've finally gotten rid of most of our zucchini. But other than our animals, other than our garden, I've been trying to save money by learning how to do things myself, how to figure things out, how to fix things. I've tried to fix my car, I've tried to fix my truck, and I tried to change my tires by myself a couple of years ago. And so I learned how to do it. You YouTube a video, it's super easy. You take out a few bolts, you jack up the truck first, don't take out the bolts first. Jack up the truck first, you take the bolts out, you take the tire out, you put it back on. I'm not confident enough to do my brakes yet. We'll try that someday, but given how this turned out, we'll see. Put the tires back on. It was great. I had to go to a shoot the next day. We're driving down the road. My tire is following me down the road. I was like, that's not supposed to happen. And it bounced down the road and into the woods. So I had to go and find this tire. And I wish this was not a true story. And so I'm on the side of the road. My truck is leaning like this. And I had enough momentum, believe it or not, to get to the side of the road at least, ruined my rotors, but to get to the side of the road, and now I went and found my tire, and how am I going to get this on? I didn't have a jack. I had no idea what I was going to do, so I tried to sit there, call somebody, call my mom. She didn't know what to do. Call Nicole. She didn't know what to do, and eventually somebody come driving by. And that's the benefit of living rurally. That's the benefit of living in the country, is that you don't have cops show up. There's a couple years ago where I had gone off the side of the road, and I just slid. I had a little dinky car. I didn't have my truck yet, and I just slid, and I was sitting there, and somebody called the cops, and everybody showed up. Everybody. I was just like, I just need somebody to pull me out. We had the fire department. We had police officers. We had way too many people for little old me on the side of the road with this little Hyundai Elantra. This is dumb. I feel stupid because I just can't. So I'm sitting there on the side of the road with my truck. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And eventually, a buddy of mine came by, jacked it up for me, and I had lost my nuts. Don't know where they went. Found two, was able to get to the hardware store and drive the rest of the way. So that was my first experience in trying to fix my truck and trying to figure things out. And then, that spring, again, cleaning things up, getting things ready for the garden, we started our burn barrel. And we were throwing brush in. We got a ton of stuff that we just had to burn, had to get rid of. And being a man, like fire, caveman. And so I wanted it to be bigger. I wanted it to be as big as possible. It's hot, feels good. And so gasoline, you just pour gasoline. I now know. You use a cup of gas, you toss it, you stand back, you toss it. I did not do that. I had an almost empty can of gasoline that I was, just the last little bit. We did the last little bit. And the next thing I remember is being on the ground. So somewhere between me pouring gasoline and me on the ground, the gas can exploded in my face. And so I'm laying on the ground, ears still ringing, fire all around me. I had at least the wherewithal to do my stop, drop, and roll. I was already dropped. I was already on the ground, so we just did the roll and tried to get the fire out. So I got the fire out, fortunately, and then being a man, I didn't want to go to the hospital. I was like, it's fine. I was at the sink. I managed to get to the house. I wasn't blinded. I was fortunately very minimally injured. So I got to the sink, and I was just dousing my face because it burnt. And I was just dousing it. And Nicole said, should we go to the hospital? I was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. And that's all I was doing for 5 or 10 minutes. So she called my mom. And, of course, my mom could convince me to go to the hospital. So we grabbed a wet towel and some snow from outside. We put it into a bucket, and we show up at the hospital. I'm dabbing my face with this cloth. And this was right 2021, mid-COVID. And, of course, they have to ask the triage questions and the COVID questions. What are you here for? Face, blew myself up. Stupid, I know. And she said, okay, we'll get you in Medicare card. We did the exchange of information. I went to sit down, and she was like, okay, I'll come get your information afterwards. And I'm sitting there in the hospital with this bucket of ice water and a towel, and she comes over with the hand sanitizer. She's like, can I get you to sanitize your hands? And I didn't know what to do, because I just looked at her and was like, no. Because if you get sanitizer on your hands and then you put it on a burn, it is not going to be fun. Fortunately, I got away with it that time. We move from triage into the ER, and I get plastered because I had burns on my arms, I had burns on my face. So I'm laying in the hospital bed with bandages on my face and this cooling cream, and I hear the nurses giggling. And then I hear a nurse say, are you the guy with the bunnies? I'm like, well, probably, yeah. Are you that guy on YouTube, Facebook with the rabbits? I'm like, yes. She tried asking me for my autograph, but I couldn't see. I was covered, I was plastered. And so I have been trying to figure things out for a couple of years and learning different things as we go along. I learned a few tips, a few tricks, ways you're not supposed to do things, ways you're supposed to do things. And at my niece's birthday this year, I learned how valuable butter is, not just for eating, but as a tool. I'd been doing some fiberglass work for my brother's SUV, and I got really sticky hands. And I tried everything. I knew for most things you can dissolve it with a solvent, use gasoline, probably a bad idea for me, but I did it anyway. Tried to dissolve it off my hands, but it's still sticky, still tacky, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. And my mom suggested something greasy will take away something sticky. So at my niece's birthday party, I left, and I came back, and Nicole described them as butter hands because I just came back out of nowhere like this with butter on my hands. And she didn't know what to think. And now I use butter for everything. Anytime it gets sticky, I get pine sap on my hands, done. Anything. And I will use butter to get rid of anything sticky. And so this week you may have noticed a little cut on my arm. And if you've ever kept chickens, they get out. We don't like our chickens getting out because, one, they're going to get eaten by a fox. They're going to take it by a weasel. Something's going to happen to them. So we built these beautiful chicken tractors, of course, out of salvaged materials. And if you've ever tried to catch a chicken, my most successful way of catching a chicken is turning into a linebacker and just running around back and forth until you can dive on them. And if you've ever built a chicken tractor, you know that they're going to try to get back in there where they feel safe. So I, like an idiot, run around and around. And if Nicole ever looks out the window in the morning, that's always what I'm doing, is running around the chicken tractor because I accidentally let chickens out because they're not impenetrable because I'm an idiot. I don't know how to build things properly. They're out of salvaged materials. So this little chicken got out, and he was fast. I was surprised at how fast this little chicken was. So we did 8 or 10 rounds, and then I stood back for a second. And I was like, all right, we got to turn it into high gear. We're going to get him. So I dove with one arm. I had it on the chicken tractor. The other arm, I managed to grab him, and my arm stayed on the chicken tractor, and I still grabbed him. And yeah, that's how I end up with a cut like that. So we've had our pigs, we've had chickens, we've had ducks, we've had mishaps, we've had heartbreak, we've had heartache. But one of the most fun animals that I've had so far, we're starting to get up in bigger animals. We don't have a bigger property, but we've moved on to goats. Goats are something that I was able to, believe it or not, convince Nicole to get because raw milk is really good for you. If you look it up, raw milk is incredibly good for you. Can be dangerous. Just know how long to keep it outside the fridge. So we got goats. And because people know that I have animals, they know that they can drop them off. They can just give them to me. And again, because I know that I think it's hilarious there's Nicole right there, to be able to bring home animals without telling Nicole, our dishwasher broke. Again, DIY guy, I was trying to fix it. I posted on Facebook, does anybody have a dishwasher? I got a dishwasher, awesome. And I show up to this guy's house, we load the dishwasher, and he jokingly says, you want a goat? And I thought for a second, and then we carried the dishwasher away and loaded it in the truck, and I was like, are you serious about that goat? And believe it or not, he was serious about that goat. So I did decide to bring that home, and Nicole was not happy about that. She was very surprised that I would just bring home this. It was a castrated boy. Why would I bring home a useless animal? But I have a heart like my mother does for the beautiful animals, for big, beautiful animals. We want to get into bigger animals someday. But the smallest animals that we've had, or the smallest creature that we've taken care of, is bees. And I've loved taking care of my bees. It's very therapeutic. I've heard that the hum of bees can be very good for you, can be very good for PTSD, and very good for taking care of just, you're focused on it. You're keeping the mites out. You're trying to take care of these hives. And so we started our first year. We got a couple of weak hives. We didn't know what we were doing. We were trying to learn, trying to figure this all out. And then last year, we got into more hives. We grew, and we got stung. I got stung. Nicole's always scared when I bring the little fellow over that he's going to get stung. I'm not scared. I'm going over there just like this. We're just going to play in it. I made the mistake one day of going over in a hoodie, a black hoodie, and I peeked it open. I just wanted to see, was there honey? Was it open? And I got stung right in the eyeball, right here. And I swelled right up. If you've seen pictures of it, it looks foolish. I looked ridiculous. So I decided the best course of action for that was I was going to get an ID picture taken. Now, 10 years ago, I had a massive beard, really long hair, back when I had hair. Very sad now. But I had long hair and a beard, and so I got the 10-year passport, and that's what I look like. I have a really long beard, really long hair, and I look foolish. So when I got stung by a bee, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to get my firearms license picture when I had bald head, mustache at the time, and just a swollen up eye. So if you've seen my PAL, or if you ever see my PAL, I look ridiculous. I look like a criminal in every picture. I'm surprised that when I go to the States, I do not get pulled over. But our overall goal as homesteaders, as what we do, is to do things cheaply, to try to figure things out along the way, and to try to learn as much as we can, as well as teaching other people. We're very fortunate to have the TV show to be able to share, hence the guys filming today. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about what not to do, and we are excited moving into the future to figure out this stuff. It's been a journey, but we're excited to keep going. Thank you. Yeah. What about the gopher? I sat down on the curb and unfortunately he passed. So I put him in a box and I buried him in the backyard because I cannot just toss them away. I know. I was hoping. That's why we glazed over that part. We didn't want to talk about death and demise because there's been a lot of that over the last couple of years. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? I don't know how long we went. Probably not long enough, but it's fine.
You still have 20 minutes if you want.
Oh yeah. Questions?
Ben, does the goat that's useless, does he cut your grass?
So, funny story about the goat that's useless. I got him, brought him home, and he was bigger than all of my other goats. All my other goats are Nigerian dwarfs. We're going to try doing goat yoga, which is, has anybody heard of goat yoga? It's a weird thing that city people do. I don't understand it. But so, city people will come and just hang out with goats. I don't know why. I hang out with goats because they give me milk, and
People don't hang out with goats.
that's what they want. I got to pen them off. They're going to come with their yoga mats, and yeah, people will pay money to come hang out with my goats, and I'm like, I'm in. If you're going to pay me for that, I'm in. But this guy was a little big, a little dangerous. He was an alpine, so he had massive horns. So I needed to get rid of him. So what I did is I have friends, my sound guy who's not here today, but my sound guy also got goats recently. So I called his wife and I said, don't tell Jack, but I'm giving you a goat next time you guys come film. And they did. We filmed for the entire day, and then I showed him my new goat. I was like, Jack, what do you think of my goat? Do you like my goat? He's like, yeah, it's a pretty good goat. Decent, I guess. I was like, he's your goat now. He's your problem, sucker. And I put a leash on him. I drug him to the truck. We chained him up in the truck in a cage, and he discovered that it was now his goat, and we were able to get rid of it. So now I'm down to fewer goats than that. Other questions?
How do you get rid of mites?
How do you get rid of mites? So the easiest way that I found is to shake powdered sugar over them because it'll coax them to, or spray sugar water because it'll coax them to groom each other. That will help you, unless it's like an infestation, but that coaxes them to groom each other to get all the white pieces off because otherwise the mites will eat their wings and whatnot and then really kill your hives. So that way every fall, what I would do is sprinkle the icing sugar over top of it and like you're baking a cake. You sprinkle the sugar over every frame and you put it in. Just don't do too much because if it gets humid then it'll mold and then you'll lose hives, and I've done that too. So you got to be careful about that. Anybody else?
What do you think is the most cost-effective activity you've done in the homestead as far as saving money?
Ooh. My favorite and best is probably with regards to electricity. So heating your home in the wintertime is going to be brutal. Probably most people, actually, show of hands, who has a wood stove? Fewer people than I expected. Wow. So wood stove is by far the best thing we've done. I mean, you still have to invest in getting that wood and bringing it inside. There's a lot of sweat equity put into that. But for me, that's my favorite thing. I mean, I sit by that and have so many hours sitting by the wood stove. Second to that is just growing a garden. Growing a garden is so simple compared to what people think it is. I had friends this summer that said they couldn't. Actually, they said that they were devastated at the prices of groceries because they had to buy, get this, they had to buy whole fruit instead of the cut-up fruit tray. Terrible. And I said, you could do that and cut it up anyway. Anyway, they discovered that it's cheaper to buy fruit and cut it up. And the same people, I said, well, why don't you just grow a garden? Like, it's easy. Growing a garden, again, throw seeds in the ground. I'm good at that. Pumpkins everywhere. So just throw seeds in the ground, figure it out. And they did a few little things. And I said, why don't you grow tomatoes? She's like, oh, I don't like tomatoes. I said, what do you mean you don't like tomatoes? Like, I don't eat tomatoes. No tomato sandwiches or anything. And I was like, do you eat spaghetti sauce? Do you eat pizza sauce? Like, learn how to cook. That's valuable too, is learning how to prepare all these things, to make all these things and put it all together. The ingredients are all around us, and we're learning even this year about a lot of forage things. I'm trying to move off of coffee and onto tea, and a lot of the stuff you can harvest yourself, from spruce tips in the springtime, red clover, goodness, even some grasses and such around here. I was recently out filming with a clinical herbalist, and we couldn't walk 5 feet without finding something. She'd say, that's good for your heart. That's good for your lungs. That's good. It was amazing. And that's something we've been learning over the last couple of years, is what thing can we use, what herbalism can we use to figure out how to heal ourselves. One of my favorites now is mullein, which is an expectorant. I had to look that word up because I couldn't pronounce it. An expectorant, which means it's going to release phlegm from your lungs. And I have a brother who smokes, and so we're trying to convert him from cigarettes to Mullen or herbal cigarettes. And so just learning about things. Knowledge is going to be your most valuable asset, and figuring things out and watching me do it wrong so that you can do it correctly.
You mentioned using icing sugar to go against the mites, but everybody in the province probably has this common problem trying to grow plants or even the vegetables. Charlotte County, we love our deer. We have deer everywhere. Is there anything you can recommend, Ben, that, I mean, I found some chicken wire to prevent them getting at my hostas and flower garden, but the vegetables, they get in there. And we can put chicken wire around that. But the garden, that was another story. It didn't do so well.
So there's two approaches. There's two really good approaches to that. One DNR really doesn't like, and one they do. One is filling your freezer and not telling anybody. The other is a gentleman who owns a mountain homestead that I recently spoke to said that we shouldn't be fighting against nature. Our idea of monoculture crops and trying to spray things to keep bugs away, and I talked to a soil scientist that said you should keep tons of things all growing together so you confuse the bugs flying over top. They won't know where your vegetables and things are. So if you have things laid out so they can see them, they're going to come for them. So plant extra if you have room to do that. Or there are, hair is one thing. They'll be eating the grass. They'll come on hair. If you have a barber friend, you can put hair around your garden.
You don't have it.
Yeah, personally, I get other places, but I'm not. Basically, it stops here, and then, yeah. But hair from a barber shop is great. Yeah, anybody, other suggestions?
You're just taller than you're supposed to be.
Pepper flakes. Hot pepper flakes, because they were eating our strawberries. We sprinkled it over the strawberries. They haven't touched them. But you got to put them on after the rains again.
Or they just get really into spicy food. Careful, you're getting a new breed of deer that's really into salsa.
Spicy strawberries.
How about your composting? Do you compost?
Yeah, so especially with that's one reason we'd like to get back into rabbits, because their compost is green. Same with goats, green compost. You can use it directly in your garden because it's pellets, right? Goats are pellet poo, and so are rabbits. It's the best way to just throw it right onto your garden. If you saw a video on my channel last year, experimented with human poo manure, which you can put into your garden. Nicole didn't like that. I got a section to myself in the garden of my little outhouse corner of tomatoes. They grew amazing, but she wouldn't touch them. Oh yeah, I was even talking about this on the way here today. The bacteria on our body is meant to, it's everywhere. You have MRSA, you've got ridiculous, gross bacteria all over, but when it is where it's supposed to be, it's good, right? You have E. coli, you got coliforms in your gut, you get it in your mouth and in your stomach, it's going to make you sick. If it's overgrown, it's going to make you sick. So as long as it's in the place that it's supposed to be, you'll be okay. So for compost, and that's what I've been learning over the last couple of years with regards to permaculture, is everything ebbs and flows. Everything has its place. So I'm going to get milk from my goats. My goats are going to make poo for my garden, or any of our vegetable scraps. We basically throw everything into our compost pile. Flies are going to grow on it. It's going to smell. It's going to be gross. But my chickens will go through my compost pile and eat all of those bugs, eat all of the maggots, regardless of what it is. The bones, if you burn them, are going to burn down to bone meal. Amazing compounds that a lot of people don't think of. When you buy a garden fertilizer, it's going to be NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You don't think about calcium, you don't think about magnesium, but these are things that plants really need to grow and are really important for their growth cycle, especially in the beginning or especially in the end when they're fruiting. So you really need to focus on some of those extra ones. Things like eggshells, which some people don't even think about. You can dry them, sprinkle them. That's another thing for pests in your garden. Slugs will crawl along crushed eggshells and it slits them right open. So it's a good way to It's a good way to get rid of or keep slugs at bay from your garden. And it's a great way to add calcium into your garden as well. So sprinkling eggshells. And if you have chickens, you break them all the time or you're eating them all the time. So you've got plenty to fill. Either dry them or not. We just throw them out wherever. And we use those plentifully in our garden. And we use them along our tomatoes and peppers and anything that really needs calcium. Calcium's along the end of the life cycle. So when it's fruiting, creating fruiting bodies, so calcium, magnesium, those different types of salts.
I just found out that copper wire around my raised bed gardens keeps the slugs out.
Really?
A little, just a 12 gauge wire.
This year,
They will not cross copper.
this year,
Or crushed up seashell.
we first started experimenting this spring with electroculture. Anybody heard of electroculture? So electroculture, the premise is that it's bringing ionic energy from the atmosphere. It sounds absolutely crazy. Basically, you take a coil of copper wire and you stick it in the ground. It's supposed to make your plants grow better. I don't know if it works. We tried it out and our stuff grew okay, but considering my failures and considering my successes, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But electroculture has a lot of research backing it, a lot of information backing it, and it's been a cool experiment to try out. I posit that it is the extra copper or the ions that are going into the soil that maybe the plants need, that we've depleted it. But I know same with water troughs. If you have trouble with algae growing in a water trough or in a water bin, throw in copper and it will prevent any algae from growing. If you are still watching, thank you for watching. And if you are curious as to what else goes on here on our homestead, we filmed an entire documentary that just came out recently here on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. It's about an hour long as well. So check that out. Let me know what you think. And let me know what your favorite joke was or favorite story was from this past talk here in the comments below. Because genuinely, I'm curious because I'd like to keep people informed and tell more funny stories at more events that we get asked to do.